All right, then welcome you to this edition of In the Conference Room with Mark F. Swee. And I want you to sit back and relax and enjoy the conversation as we do each and every single week. And we're well into the new year, of course. And I don't know about where you're tuning in from, of course, here in the great city of Detroit, the state of Michigan. We got a little bit of snow, a little bit of cold, but hey, it is January. My name is Mark S. Swee. As I mentioned, I'm your host. And this is where we talk to business leaders and entrepreneurs from across the great city of Detroit to the state of Michigan, as well as across the country. And today is no exception of an exceptional guest, Mr. Denzell Turner. He's a podcaster extraordinaire. He's a young voice in this city. He's doing some great things, and you're going to really enjoy listening to him. Denzell, thank you for joining me in the conference room. How you doing?
What up, though? Happy to be here and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. There's that. What up, though? You and I have had a chance to connect over the last several months through various opportunities. Our paths have crossed. I've actually been on certainly your podcast as well. So let's start with the very basics about you. Who are you? Where are you from? And talk about your entrepreneurial journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Denzell Turner once again, born and raised in the city of Detroit. Absolutely love my city. Spent a little bit of time away, but had to bring it right back. And by day, I'm a marketing professional, and I've been doing that for almost 15 years now, or maybe a little bit over 15 years, and working in different industries in terms of tech, automotive, consumer products, retail goods, sports entertainment, you name it. I've had an opportunity to touch it so far. And I've been able to take that experience with leveraging my creativity and then my passion and love of business and how they operate, and then being able to transform that and channel it into my aspirations of being of a love of media and turning that into excuse me, what started as a passion product in my podcast Black Fridays, and being able to start to work towards the scale that in terms of spotlighting Black owned businesses and our Black business and community leaders in the Metro Detroit area and beyond. And so I started that journey 5 years ago in 2020 when I had literally just moved back home for the summer from my graduate program. And a few days after that, the George Floyd murder had happened. And so there was during that time frame, there was a call out for a Blackout Tuesday, and people were saying only support Black owned businesses on this particular Tuesday. And so I did my civic duty, or being able to follow and support that trend. And I just started playing around with the idea of Black Friday, why we can't do something on a consistent basis with Black owned businesses. And so I sat on it for a little bit. And that September, I launched the Instagram live series, Black Fridays, where I started to reach out to different people in my community who I knew were creatives, Black professionals climbing the corporate ladder, entrepreneurs, business owners, and wanted to be able to spotlight the dope work that they were doing to be a beacon of light for what we were dealing with in terms of the darkness in the community and the civil unrest. And so ever since then, in about a year and some change later, I turned it into an official podcast and put it on the streaming platforms, and then started doing video interviews as well. And ever since then, I've been able to share these Black owned stories, and been able to have guests like you on the podcast, Mary Sheffield, Garland Gilchrist, Herman Moore, Detroit Lions legend, and so many others who have amazing stories, and being able to unravel the business behind it and then also their personal journeys to be able to make it real for the people and the audience that's listening, to hopefully inspire them to be able to pursue their dreams and their passions.
So you mentioned excuse me, by the way, thank you for having me on your podcast. I really enjoyed it. You talked about being a marketing professional. I'm curious when you talk briefly about your role as a marketing professional and how that has helped you with your podcast as well. So, just kind of get an overview of that marketing background and tie that into the podcast in terms of it being beneficial for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I knew that at a young age, I wanted to do something business related. Now that I really know what business was, no, or I mean, it's so broad once you start to get into it. But I knew I wanted to be in corporate essentially when I was younger, or at least that's the pathway that I felt I wanted
Right.
to go. And so that picture started to become more apparent to me. I went to Cass Tech. Cass Technical High School, the best high school in the state of Michigan, but that's neither here nor there. I think that's a foregone conclusion. But as far as me dive into business studies and understanding what that was, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see a pathway here. But I think that once I got to went to University of Michigan, studied there, and once I got there, I thought the pathway that I wanted to go was to be in sports management. I love sports and entertainment, and I wanted to be in that space. And so it turns out that me and science classes or kinesiology classes at the University of Michigan did not get along. So my backup plan was to go communications. And then once I got into communications, I took off. Like my grades got better. I was so much more interested in school and the classes that I took and the professors and learning opportunities. And so that's kind of where I found my lane, being able to understand how media works, how messages are communicated. And one thing that I didn't like was how uh, all of the stereotypes of Black people that were perpetuated in media and like continue to be perpetuated. I'm like, well, is there a way to be able to change that and get some more positivity around not only my city and but my people and people of diverse backgrounds around the world? And so it's just something that kind of stuck with me, and that was me being able to combine my passion of business or wanting to be involved in like corporate, and then also the creativity that comes with media and that comes with the media aspect. I think that's where I found my lane for marketing, because I felt like it was a way to be able to combine the two. And so I had some mentors along the way that I've been able to kind of shape that for me. And then that was the pathway that I took coming out of college. And I started working in automotive. Obviously, that's the big industry here. And then I took a marketing job there. Wasn't necessarily what I thought it was going to be as far as marketing, more so the back end, but that was the beginning of my marketing journey, being able to learn about the data, the analytics that go into being able to tell stories behind the numbers. So that's how I got started on that pathway.
And then tying that into your podcast, how has that benefited your podcast as well?
It's
The
benefited my
marketing background. Mhm.
it benefited my podcast tremendously because it allows me to pull different creative levers when it comes to being when it comes to that marketing. So being able to understand the numbers and the metrics of when people are listening to your show, how people are listening to it, what type of people are listening to it, then being able to take that to say, okay, now that I understand this audience a little bit better, how can I better communicate with them about why they should listen to this show or this particular episode? And then what are the different touch points I want to play around with in terms of engaging with them? So, for example, I've been able to build my entire marketing flow. So, being able to have a website, my social media, also the video content that I developed that goes on YouTube and stream it, and then being able to have being able to play around with the creativity of how I want to show up and interact with my audience members. I think that aspect helps tremendously from my marketing background into the podcast, because one thing that people fail to realize in podcasting is that if you don't have like a engine or a big name behind you that's pushing your show, it's very hard to get picked up for someone to just randomly find a new podcast. It doesn't really happen like that. So you really have to, and one of my good friends who is a fellow podcaster had said this, you have to hustle your show like a mixtape almost. Like you have to really go out there and petition for your platform and your show so that people can be able to, you can be able to find the people who needs your show to hear the content that you have, hear from the guests that you have, or just be able to hear your voice or opinion on certain things. So you really have to be able to push it. And that's where the marketing aspect comes in if you are an independent podcaster.
I want to unpack the podcast a little bit further because obviously the media landscape has changed. Certainly, the expansion beyond the traditional media defined as television, radio, and print. Now we're seeing more streaming services, more certainly the digital space, such as podcasting. I say that to say in the old days, people really clamored to get on, they wouldn't get into traditional media because you didn't have these other avenues. And as based on your experience, and you're doing a heck of a job talking to the next generation of folks here in Detroit and beyond, it seems as though podcasting has certainly opened up another avenue for people and that everybody's trying to get into podcasting. So what makes Denzell Turner, what makes a successful podcast? How have you been able to thrive where other people just seem to be trying to put things out there, messages, and they're trying to get their names or faces or some type of new media tool? Talk to us about your level of success and what makes a successful podcast.
Yeah, I think it's a few things. So I think number one is clarity of your concept or your idea and what you're talking about. I think that because of there being quote unquote um, what do you call it? Overpopulation of the podcast community. People feel like that there's nothing new to talk about or anything like that. But I feel like that is the exact opposite. And if you can be able to tailor your messaging to communicate to the audience who needs to hear your information, and the more clear that you can get about that, that is the foundational step to be able to create a successful podcast. Now, once you have that clarity of messaging, it's going to be a lot easier to make content, to get guests, to come up with concepts and how you want to be able to structure your show. So once you get that down packed, now it's about being consistent, because I've seen so many podcasters come and go. People have shows, they release episodes sparingly when they want to. That's not how you develop an audience or being able to build connections with the people that you're trying to get in touch with. You have to be able to show up on a consistent basis, whatever that looks like. At minimum, you want to be able to do a show bi-weekly. I don't recommend doing a show, anyone doing podcasts and releasing their content monthly, because it's so easy to for people to forget about you and what it is that your show is going to be about. So at minimum, bi-weekly. And then for me, it's been weekly, a weekly concept, which is not the easiest to do, but you want to get consistent in some way, shape, or form, in whatever that looks like. So people know when they expect you, and then they can trust that you're going to show up and show up in a way that they're used to. That's how that works. And then the last piece of it is what we just talked about in terms of being able to actually market your show, like just recording the show, getting guests and doing all that. That's great. That's probably the first half of it, but you really got to go out and figure out how you're going to push the show. What are the different pockets that people who would listen to my show are in or engaged with? And then how do I go after them? Are they typically on Instagram? Are they on Pinterest? Are they always on YouTube? Are they always listening to audiobooks in the car? You have to be able to figure out what that is for them. And then how do you go to those people and engage with them? And then once you are able to have those structures in place, those three things, I think that's what starts to build the foundation of a solid show. And then I think consistency is probably the biggest of those, because you gotta keep showing up, and you gotta keep showing up in the right places.
One thing I really, all those are excellent advice points. One thing that really struck out with me, because I get asked a lot about people who approach me about podcasting, all the things I do in the city, but love the fact that you said have clarity. What is your lane? And I think what I noticed that a lot of people, again, they just want to figure out a way, just throw something out there and hoping it's just going to stick up against the wall, get their name and then get their face out there, thinking it's going to certainly take them to another level. And I love what you're saying. You're saying find that clarity, find your lane, be intentional. Make sure that you develop a program that certainly can help you build your audience. And oh, by the way, how about, like you said, marketing? People, they haven't heard of it. You have to somehow figure out how to build that awareness level. And of course, the last thing I'm going to ask you about in the context of marketing a podcast or podcasting from your perspective, people want to know, well, how do you monetize a podcast? A lot of people are not necessarily sure, not talking about me personally, I'm just saying for the audience in general, the question becomes, well, if I do a podcast, is there an opportunity to monetize it?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can, I literally got the book behind me that helped me start to figure that out. It's called the seven. I think it's the 7 ways to be able to monetize a podcast, something along those lines. But a great book, a great read. If I can find it before we wrap up, I'll make sure I flash it on the screen. But as far as some of the ideas of where I got to monetize my podcast from there, was it's a few different ways. So I think the traditional way that people think that they're going to monetize a podcast is through the different platforms. So if I have a podcast, I can put content on social media, then I can get my page monetized and get paid from there, or I can get paid from YouTube, or the streaming platforms are going to pay me. And so I got news for people in terms of that is probably the lowest level of payment that you could get from being able to monetize your podcast. And it's extremely hard, especially if you're independent or if you're a small podcaster. You have to average about 1,000 downloads either per episode or per month before these platforms, any of these streaming platforms are going to pay you out. And then YouTube has their own algorithm and metric. I still haven't been monetized on YouTube. I'm close to it, but I'm still working towards it after being a few years on that program, on the platform, and being diligent about making sure I'm uploading content. So it's a strenuous process, and it doesn't have as much upside. Now, where you do get the most upside in terms of being able to monetize a podcast is brand deals, sponsorships. And then, well, let me stay on brand deals and sponsorships first. So brand deals and sponsorships, that's probably the biggest bucket. Being able to align your show what your portfolio of work that you've been able to create through the show, what your platform is about, and then being able to identify who would be good partners for me to work with. So if you are a techie like myself, are there different equipment manufacturers that you could work with, who people who produce microphones and things like that as it relates to podcasting? If you are into lifestyle and beauty, could I work with a lip bar or some cosmetic brand? So being able to understand what that alignment is, and then really just hustling and hitting the pavement to see, reaching out and say, hey, can we do something? And it may be nominal at first, but being able to build those relationships, and then that can turn into those larger scale brand deals, just depending on how you're able to find that alignment and figure out what works best for your platform. So that's sponsorships, and so that's brand deals, and then sponsorships is more so like you are creating ads in your show or space in your show for those businesses or those partners that you would have, and then that works similarly as well. And then also I think the other biggest bucket, probably a 1B or to the brand and sponsorships 1A, is being able to am I think I'm blanking out. Hold on, wait. Okay, yeah, now I'm back. So
You're good.
I'm
You're
back.
good.
Yeah.
I
So
do it all the time, man.
all right, I got it. So it's in terms of the biggest podcasters that I've studied that's out there, they all have their own businesses on the back end that they leverage their podcast as a marketing avenue to the work that they do on the back end. So whether it's a community that they have built, it's a suite of services that they have developed, or they have paywalls and things like that to be able to give you exclusive content on the back end. There's something on the back end that the podcast is being leveraged in order to draw you towards. So let's say, for example, you are a tax professional and you want to help people, with their taxes, especially during tax season. So you develop a podcast, you talk about taxes, you interview people, you do solo episodes, etc. But at the end of the day, where your bread and butter is that you're drawing people to your tax business in hopes that they can see you as a thought leader in that space, and then they'll come and get their taxes done with you or do some type of business with you. So developing your own business or having your own business on the back end is probably the simplest way to make sure that you can monetize your show, or in most underrepresented way of being able to monetize your platform. So it would be those three buckets that the ways that you can monetize your show.
Two other things briefly before we wrap up. If you're joining us, you're talking to Denzell Turner. He's a podcaster. He's giving some great advice. He's also starts his show by saying, "What up, Doe?" Because I've had the opportunity of being on it, and does a great job. Two things briefly I want to touch on. One is your connection. One of the things I admire about you is your ability to connect now with a younger generation, a younger audience. And I've been doing this, as you know, for quite a while, and certainly I have a certain audience, but I love the fact that, you are connecting with the younger generation, the next generation, if you will. Talk about the importance of the next generation in terms of how they consume information, media, and the content that they certainly listen to on a daily basis.
Yeah, this is where they're at. So we're talking about in a generation where, I mean, I'm a millennial, and I have to realize that we're kind of like the now or the present, but Gen Z and Gen Alpha is here as well, and that this is where we're at in the digital world, and this is how they experience information and consume information as well. And even people who are in older generations as well, us being ushered into the digital age, this is where it's all at. So people are not traditionally like even in work settings or corporate settings, it's harder to get people to listen to or consume information in traditional settings. So how do you get creative in terms of that? And podcasting is one way to do that, because that has become a norm of being able to find the content that it is that you want to hear and be able to listen to. And then you think about just some of these video game platforms where back in the day it was just about competition and playing with your friends. But nowadays it's a social hub for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, where it's like, hey, I can't see my friends on a consistent basis. We don't necessarily go outside and just play all day like we used to, or other generations used to. We're going to hop on the game. And then that's how we spend our Friday, Saturday nights, being able to just hang
Mm-hmm.
out. Nobody's going to the mall anymore. So this is the space that we're creating for ourselves. So it's all about being in the digital space. And then how can you make sure that you're showing up in that digital space to be able to reach those younger people and have a higher chance of if that's the market that you're going for or the people that needs to receive your message. How do you make sure that you are connecting and reaching them in the spaces that they actively are? And like I said, it's all in the digital space today. So YouTube streaming, all those things, that's what they're familiar with. Live streaming has becoming a huge thing where like we had reality TV back in the day where that was shot in a certain period of time in a certain space. Now live streaming, like somebody could be walking around down the street with a whole camera crew following them and being able to connect with so many people across the world. So
Yeah.
those are the spaces that they're in, and it's important that we understand how those spaces work and being able to show up in those spaces as well.
And then as we wrap up, I would be remiss to ask you, obviously, a very special day here and the significance of the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., certainly coming off of his weekend and certainly his day. Give me your thoughts from your perspective about Dr. King.
Yeah, so Dr. King, I hold in a high regard just in terms of being able to be that leader of a civil rights movement back in the day when that wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to do. And it's so many different schools of thoughts on Dr. King, his messaging, how he went about things. But you really can't take away the fact that he decided to stand up for something and put his literally put his life on the line for the things that he believed in and being able to push things forward and make this a better place for people who look like us and then also people who didn't look like us but came from diverse backgrounds. And so I just think that fight is so important. And every Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I make it my duty to be able to do something to reflect on the day. So me going to Michigan, the University of Michigan's Martin Luther King Jr. Symposium that they do for a week or a couple weeks. The main event happening on the day of that we observe Dr. King's Day, but also being able to have programming university wide throughout the remainder of that week and prior to and so forth. Just making sure that I'm involved in some way, shape, or form to be able to take those lessons from the past that were take those lessons from the past and being able to apply them to the future. A lot of things has changed, but a lot of things haven't as well. And so there's a lot more fight to be had. And I'm just trying to do my civic duty, whatever that looks like, in order to make the world a better place for people that look like me in our community. And I think that that's also what fuels and drives the Black Fridays podcast, to be able to spotlight these people who are doing the work in their communities to improve their communities. They're hiring people in their communities. They're building business to be able to help people with their livelihood in our communities. And so I want to be able to continue to push that forward. And that's what comes to mind when I think about Dr. King and his legacy and the significance of this day.
I couldn't see it better. I couldn't see it better. And, obviously, Dr. King and a true change maker in this country. And as we always say, it's never a day off. It's a day on. And like you, I have activities not just on his day, but throughout the entire week. And as you're saying, University of Michigan, I had the honor of attending a luncheon and some other things to Eastern Michigan University. I'm also an adjunct professor and other things across the great city of Detroit throughout the course of the week. So we'd encourage all of you to do that as well. And you know what? Not just this day or this week, but every single day of the year is the impact he's had on all of us, irrespective of our age, our generation. And it's important that we continue to share his legacy with the next generation, as many people as possible, because if you don't, that change will become certainly more challenging. You think it's challenging now, it will become that much more challenging. As we wrap up, the host and the creator of Black Fridays podcast, give us one more time where people can find you in the podcast, when can they listen to it, and whatever you want to say about the podcast.
For everything Black Fridays podcast, you can go to www.blackfridayspod.com. That's www.blackfridayspod.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Black Fridays Podcast, and you can find us on YouTube at the same Black Fridays Podcast. make sure that you go out there, like, subscribe, drop some comments, be able to share the platform, help me get monetized on YouTube. I'd be greatly appreciative of that. But all in all, I think that the platform overall is a library of great business lessons and stories of people in our community who have put forward the work in order to make things happen, who have been brave enough to be able to share their entrepreneurial journeys with us, the highs, the lows, and talking about it in a real way, which I don't think we're always able to get. And it's a fun, it's a lighthearted platform. It's a great listen, a great watch, and I think that just give it a chance and check it out. And I'd be happy to see you all over on the side of Black Friday. So I appreciate you for having me today, and grateful to be here.
What up, Doe?
What up, though?
And so this young man knows what he's talking about. He's making a big change in terms of how reaching people, talking to people. He's giving you a platform to tell your stories. I would encourage you to check it out. Again, Mr. Denzell Turner, I want to thank you very much for joining me in the conference room. I'll make it a great day.
You as well. Thank you.
And for all of you tuning in, thank you for tuning into this week's edition of In the Conference with Mark S. Lee. Want you to go out, make it a great day, make it a great week, stay warm. And by the way, remember, it's not a day off, it's a day on for the honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And we will check you out next time in the conference room. We'll talk to you all soon. Take care, everyone.